the years, there have been some incredible console launch titles, but as a result, there's been other games released at the same time as them that were overshadowed by those iconic rivals. Did they deserve it? Yeah, probably. But let's see. Famicom! When the NES originally launched in Japan in July 1983 as the Famicom, Nintendo did the sensible thing of releasing a near arcade-perfect version of their breakthrough game, Donkey Kong. Far superior to those that had come before it, as you can see here. The Intellivision version had Donkey Kong looking like a Rorschach ink blot test made of poo, and the Atari 2600 version didn't even bother to draw the vertical bits of the ladders. Quick side note, we all know the horizontal bits on ladders are called rungs, but did you know the vertical bits are called stiles? Did you? Did you know? Did you care? I didn't. Anyway, as well as sensibly releasing Donkey Kong, Nintendo also less sensibly made the other two Famicom launch titles ones with very similar gameplay, rather than showing off the breadth of what the new system was capable of. Donkey Kong Jr. just had the monkey's son heading skywards instead of Mario, and Popeye saw the spinach-munching cartoon tagging out Mario to scamper around in search of Olive Oil's affection instead of Pauline, on levels that felt more than a tad familiar. This trio of games meant that, on launch at least, the Famicom was essentially just a get-to-the-top-to-get-the-thing simulator, or GTTT, to use the common acronym. Sega Mark III! During this time, the focus was still very much on arcade conversions being used to sell home systems, but Nintendo had the market more or less sewn up in terms of third-party licenses, so Sega had to make do with whatever they produced themselves. When the Master System originally launched in Japan in October 1985 as the Sega Mark III, it had just two launch titles, a serviceable port of Sega's arcade game Hang On, and a port of a much worse Sega arcade game, Teddy Boy Blues, so called as a homage to the 1985 hit song of the same name. Oh, no. As you can hear, the original arcade version had an instrumental version of the tune playing in the background throughout. Both Hang On and Teddy Boy were released for the Master System on the Sega card, rather than on cartridge, as they were small enough in terms of file size, and the cards were cheaper to manufacture, which meant that when the Mark III launched, it had a cartridge slot which you couldn't put anything in. Well, I suppose you could put anything you wanted in it if you were so inclined. Am I right, lads? In terms of the evolution of Sega platformers, Teddy Boy is to Alex Kidd what Alex Kidd is to Sonic the Hedgehog, by which I mean Teddy Boy is shit squared. Mega Drive! By the time Sega's next console launched 3 years later, they'd shifted from straight arcade conversions to direct-to-home sequels, in this instance Space Harrier 2 and Super Thunderblade. There were two other games that, whilst not released on day one, are considered part of Japan's Mega Drive launch window, and those were Report of Altered Beast and one other game which never saw a release outside of Japan, Osamatsu-kun, which looks absolutely insane. I want it. It's a platformer to promote a manga series about sextuplet brothers that had a TV show reboot the same year, because why not? Super Famicom! By the time Nintendo's next console launched in November 1990, they were far more focused on the home market than the arcade, and offered two original titles, the legendary Super Mario World and the brilliant Mode 7 advert, F-Zero. There was one other title released that week in Japan though, and it was a conversion of an existing game, but not an arcade game or a Nintendo game. Bamboozled was a Super Famicom conversion of a game first seen on the C64, which got 49% from Commodore User magazine. Why? Why is that a thing that happened? God only knows. But with Nintendo seemingly feeling they were so dominant in the marketplace that they could release any old rubbish, perhaps Bamboozled is the reason that rivals went completely crazy bananas with their own launch titles for the next swathe of console releases. Philips CDI launched in December 1991 with such cutting-edge video games as Chess, Battleships and Connect 4. The Atari Jaguar launched in November 1993 with just two games, the mediocre Cybermorph and the ludicrously titled Trevor McFur in the Crescent Galaxy, whilst the 3DO went with a more accurate title for their first game, Crash and Burn, the only game available for the $699 system, and also the perfect way to describe their business plan. After these doomed beginnings for the presumed next generation of consoles, killer launch titles became a vital thing from there on in, with the next wave featuring big hitters such as the Sega Saturn's Virtua Fighter, Sony PlayStation's Ridge Racer, Nintendo's Super Mario 64, and the original Xbox's Halo Combat Evolved. But we won't talk about those games because they're actually good, and where's the fun in that?